Hello and welcome. This is Mouse Gunner, and we're back with some more Automation the Car Company Tycoon game, continuing on with the campaign roleplay of the Edison Car Company, and this time 1991. We just finished up 1986, and as I have been doing in my campaign roleplay here, is every time I go through a year period, I'll make all the models I feel are appropriate for that year period and what I want to do. And then after that's completed, we advance the clock 5 years and we go from there. So now we're in 1991. So welcome to the 90s. So we have a couple things that I want to do in the 90s, some advancement of technology we can take advantage of, and other things like that. But as per usual, when I start off a new year period, I like to start at the bottom with the Edison Car Company's lineup with the economy car, the small economy car, the Edison Luna. So we're going to be doing engines in this video, and the engines we're going to be working with is I'm going to be doing an update of the LE86 engine. Now this engine's been around a little while. I think initially it came out in 76. But because we're going to be building another engine that's going to be brand new for the Edison Car Company, we're going to keep this old engine, kind of keep tooling costs a little bit lower, and kind of just do the upgrades that we need to do for the LE86 engine to make it the LE91 engine. But the one thing we will be doing is the old venerable L135 engine will be getting retired. We'll be replacing that. Now, the L135 engine's been around since the early 60s, and it's had its day, and it's time to retire it. So we will be upgrading one engine and building one engine from scratch, brand new. But just as per usual, when you're entering a new time period, you have to build all of your engines from scratch. You can't have an engine in a family from more than one time period. So we're going to have to build a new engine family for our now LE91 engine. But before we get too much into that, I always like to use a reference material and do a comparison with the Chevy Car Company in 1991 in this instance, and what they've got as far as engines and comparing them to what we have. You know, it's a nice comparison so you can kind of see real life stats here. The Chevy Car Company starts off with a base 4 that's for the Cavalier, Corsica, and Beretta. Now, this is an overhead valve engine. Yes, Chevy's still using overhead valve engines in inline 4s at this time period. That was one thing that Chevy, kind of struggled with in the 80s and 90s, was keeping up to date in some areas. It's cast iron block and aluminum head. And we've got a displacement of 133 cubic inches, which comes out to roughly 2.2 liters. The compression ratio comes in at 9. Now, as per usual and past periods, sometimes we struggle to meet the compression ratios of real engines, and we probably still will have that problem, but we'll try our best. Brake horsepower comes in at 95 at 5,200 RPM, and torque comes in at 120 foot-pounds at 3,200 RPM. This has throttle body fuel injection, which is one thing that we'll be able to take advantage of in 1991 that we couldn't take advantage of in 1986. Although that would have been kind of common in 1986 to have fuel injection, electronic fuel injection of some type. Even Chevy had fuel injection in a number of their engines in 1986. We were unable to do that, unfortunately, at least at the way that the game works at this point. We have a base, what they call the base quad 4 for the Beretta GTZ. This is a dual overhead cam, so 16 valves, so 4 valves per cylinder. This is a cast iron block and aluminum head, as the past one was. Displacement comes in at 138 cubic inches, or 2.3 liters. The compression ratio is up at 10, and the brake horsepower is a pretty impressive 180 at 6,200 RPM. And 160 foot-pounds of torque at 5,200 RPM. So a pretty high revving, pretty high output inline 4 engine there. We've got port fuel injection for that. Now, the base 4 for the Lumina is a overhead valve engine again. It is cast iron block and head, so cast iron block all around. 151 cubic inches, or roughly 2.5 liters. And it has a compression ratio of 8.3. And it comes in with 105 horsepower at 4,800 RPM and 135 foot-pounds of torque at 3,200 RPM. And this also has fuel injection. And that's pretty much it for our inline 4s. We start going into V6s at that point, and we don't plan on having a V6 in our lineup for the Edison Car Company. So that's pretty much it. That was just the 3 engines that I listed there. This is actually one of the shorter engine lists I've seen from Chevy in this time period. So that's kind of interesting to see. Okie dokie, let's get into making our LE 91 engine. So we've got an inline 4. It's going to be a cast iron block with also a cast iron head, but we'll do that here in a bit. We've got the bore comes in at 80.2. So this is going to be a lot lower displacement than the engines I just read off to you. So we're probably not going to be able to compete too much with the numbers I just discussed here. But this engine's more about economy. And it's kind of interesting, though, in the last year period, Chevy had mini engines in this size range. This time around, they're more going for the bigger displacement engines, which I think is a little bit more common in more modern times. And actually, it's not until more recently that in the American market, that you're seeing from American car companies a lot more smaller displacement engines. So that's kind of an interesting trend that we see start to develop there. We have direct acting overhead cam, and again, we're using the old engine here, so we're not going to be upgrading that. And we've got cast iron. Oh, and I forgot to change the time period, so we better do that really quickly here. A little bit too far. We'll get it there. All right, we're in 1991. I almost put it in 1986 because I've been so used to doing that. The reason that tipped me off is the variable valve lift there. I don't think that would be available yet. Although we might have variable valve timing sometime in the 90s coming up. Okay, so as far as, I think I have everything set up or correctly. Yep, there we go. All right, so we've got cast iron, and we've got hypereutectic cast iron. Now, we do have the advantage of using low friction cast pistons this time around, which we may consider because it does increase fuel efficiency quite a bit. But the downside of that is it does not take much RPM or torque. And it doesn't reduce emissions quite as good as the hypereutectic cast pistons do, but it still does lower them, as opposed to, for instance, a normal cast piston is only at average there. Okay, so I think we're good there. The variant capacity is the same as the family capacity, so no changes needed. The compression ratio we had before was at 7.6. I have a feeling we're going to be able to improve that quite a bit, but this is kind of an indicator of what I was talking about. We had anything from, I think the lowest one that I just read off was 8.3 compression ratio. Now, again, these are higher displacement engines, so I don't know how comparable it is, but there you go. Our cam profile comes in at 42. Our styling, we'll try and use the more modern kind of setup because we're going to be using fuel injection here if I haven't already mentioned that. And the traditional color for the Luna has always been yellow, so we'll go from there. We'll go with naturally aspirated. And we've got a injection this time, and we've got single point electronic fuel injection, finally. And we'll go with standard intake and all that. And then we need our fuel, which we're going to be using regular unleaded. And now we finally have access to all 3 fuel qualities here that we have in modern times in the U.S. I think it's like 87 here in the U.S., 91 and 93. Or is it 90? Yeah, it is 90. So 87, 90, and 93 is exactly what we have in the U.S. So that opens up pretty much what we have in modern times. We've got our fuel mixture at 15, and our ignition timing comes in at 39. Our RPM limit was at 6,400, so this is a pretty heavy, high revving engine. And our exhaust is a short cast 1.25 inch diameter, although we may be changing that. And we have a 3-way cat. I'm not going to put a high flow 3-way cat, but that's interesting to see that we have that available now. I don't think it was available before, although I could be wrong with that. That will help us with a lot of our performance builds. So we both have what we consider premium fuel in the U.S., or they call super, and also a high flow cat will probably help. Now this had double reverse flow mufflers, but maybe we'll remove one. We'll have to see. Let's go ahead and run this on up. Okay, there we have our numbers, and I really did expect this thing to be all right as far as knocking and everything because we were going off of our old, using carburetor numbers. And as we can see, we have a lot of fuel octane to work with. It goes, we have 86.5 is our limit, so we've got a full 2 points there. So definitely we can raise that compression ratio, which I think I'm going to do. I'm going to raise it up to, I'm going to try and get it to 8 here. But I think that's about as far as we're going to be able to get it. So we're good there. Now we have to consider our economy. I'd like to improve it. But the question is, can the parts handle it? So the first thing I'd like to do is try our low friction cast. And we do see that immediately we have problems with our reliability. So I don't know if I'm going to go that route, but that would be an interesting route to go. First off, you're going to have a lot more, well, not a lot more, but a little bit more smoothness, and you're going to have a lot better economy. We can see that right here. Weight goes down a little bit as well, but the main thing is we lose so much reliability, and I don't really want to see that in our small economy car. You want this thing to be not only economical, but rugged and reliable. People don't have a lot of money if they're they're getting into a car like this, and they don't want to have to spend a lot of money to maintain it. Okay, so looks like our RPM limit probably needs adjusting. This is pretty flat. Though, so it may go out quite a bit. We still have a lot to move with, though, as far as our ignition timing goes. So it might bear doing that, and that's obviously going to move around where our power comes in. Okay, and that's the limit that we can move. RPM limit, let's see, where is our peak power coming in? All right, so we're still improvement. All right, so it's at 6,500, it looks like. Now, we do see a pretty big drop in reliability by doing that. But I'm not noticing much of a color change, so it's kind of interesting to see that it's such a big drop. Considering that I don't see any color change at all. And again, much more of a drop. But we're not getting our peak performance out of it. So this is where we want to be. Now, what is the difference between 6,400 and 6,000? Okay, so it is a difference. So we'll go with where our peak performance index is and kind of keep it with that. But I'm pretty happy with this engine. Not a whole lot of changes here other than we obviously need to check our exhaust diameter, make sure it's still where it needs to be, and it doesn't look like it is. This thing is increased in power quite a bit, I would imagine. So we definitely need to increase our exhaust diameter, which is going to rob us of a lot of our economy, unfortunately. Is also going to make us way louder and a little bit, way more and be a little louder is what I meant to say there. But the definite benefits and power is there. Now, obviously, we're going to lose out a little bit on torque, but that's okay. I think about removing one reverse flow muffler. Now, this is going to make our economy still worse, but not by much. It's going to bring the loudness up quite a bit. But it is going to bring that weight down, which we just increased by making the exhaust diameter a little bit more. It also keeps the cost lower, which is what I'm going for as well. So that's, I think, a pretty well-rounded engine. I don't think this engine needed to be as quiet as it was before. So I think we're good with just one reverse flow muffler. I think otherwise I'm pretty happy with this way this turned out. I do notice that where our horsepower comes in at is a little bit reduced. So maybe we need to change the RPM limit, but sometimes that isn't necessarily the case. So yeah, we're probably still at the peak, I would imagine. So we're good there. So I'm pretty happy. We don't really have any color changes, although a very slight amount of valve float. Now, if we had upgraded this to a more modern, what is the word I want to use? Valve setup or valve train, maybe it would have been not so bad. But we're using an older engine, so we don't have that advantage. So let's go ahead and name our family here. So this is the LE91 this time, and this is going to be the 1.6 liter variant. Now, if you watched the last year period, I made a small economy car called the Satellite, which uses a turbocharged version of this engine. Whether or not we'll continue with this version of the engine, I'm not exactly sure, but we'll go from there. Okay, now it's time to build our brand new engine. And I'm not actually sure where I want to go as far as displacement. As you could see from what I read off there, the trend in the US is to have higher displacement inline fours. You had 2.2, 2.3, and 2.5 liter engines. And we might do likewise, or we could go with a smaller displacement engine like a 2-liter one. Traditionally, having the L135 engine, the engine we will be replacing, we had a 2.2-liter, roughly speaking, engine. So we could kind of stick with that, or we could do something a little bit different. I think we're probably going to stick with that because we get a little bit of the balance. You know, we get 2.2, which is on the lower end of the scale of what we were seeing from Chevy, but it at least allows us to compete with the 2.3 and 5 engines. So we're going to go ahead and do a new engine. Now, whether I'm going to do the family capacity slightly different, maybe we have that go up to 2.4, and then we can do both, a 2.2 liter version and a 2.4 liter version. Might be what we do, because that's what we did with the old L135 engine. Any case, we've got our, I think I had an, well, let's go ahead and change our year period while I'm thinking about it. I had an aluminum block, aluminum head in the past with this engine. I don't think I'm going to go that route. Instead, I'm going to go cast, keep costs lower. And also, it does help with economy, as I found out later. Okay, so the bore and stroke that I'm going for is 2.2 liters, or the overall capacity. But I think we're going to go, as I said, with a larger family capacity. So we'll start off with something like 90, and then we'll go up from there. Okay, definitely we need more than that. So maybe 93-ish. Oh, that's too far. So we'll go with 92, and there we go. 90.3. So that's our family capacity. We're also going to make a 2.2 liter variant that I'm going to make now. That will be our lower displacement variant that we're going to use. Okay, so it's going to be an overhead cam engine. This is a brand new engine, so we can take advantage of a little bit better technology. So you can see the direct comparison here. So 2 valves per cylinder versus 2 valves per cylinder. This is exact direct comparison. So emissions are going to be reduced. Max RPM is going to be the same, but friction is going to be lower. So we get advantages all around, and that's even with the same 2 valves per cylinder. So that's a nice improvement. And I think that's the route I'm going to go, is 2 valves per cylinder. Now, obviously, we also have an increase in cost here, and also weight and production unit time. So you also have to keep that in mind. 91, not 92. Okay. That's interesting that 92 we get variable valve lift, 91 we don't. Okay. I guess that's our cutoff. All right, so let's go ahead and get into here. So I'm going to cast, and probably hypertectic here. Okay, so we've got our bore and stroke. We need to change for our variant capacity, get it down. So the bore is going to come down, let's say 90.5, or maybe even 90. And then we're going to bring our stroke down until we get 2.2 liters. Oh, it's a lot more than I thought I would have to move it. So we'll move a little bit with the bore here as well. There we go. And we're getting close. Let's do that. There we go, 2.2 liters. So there's our bore and stroke for our variant capacity. So we've got a couple setups we can do in the future. Now we need to go on to the compression. I'm going to bring it down to 8, just as a safe kind of point to put it. Camp profile, I'm going to keep it the standard 40. Styling, let's see what we got. This is a brand new engine for me, so it looks like we have 2 types. We've got this kind of older style, and we've got this more modern style. I think we'll save the more modern style for maybe another time, and we'll use this one. There we go. Okay, and we will also color this one yellow. And we'll move from there. So we need naturally aspirated. We need injection, single point injection, fuel injection, electronic fuel injection. We need... Oh, I'm not going to do anything with there. We would need regular fuel. I'm going to bring the fuel mixture down to 15, which I normally do. And if you're wondering why I do that, is honestly, I'm kind of gaming the system. You get more out of having your fuel mixture all the way down and your compression ratio a little bit lower, and then having a higher ignition timing. I know that doesn't necessarily make sense, but that's the way the game kind of works. So yes, I am gaming the system a little bit. I apologize for that, but it is kind of what the game encourages you to do. And then RPM limit, I'll just keep at its standard 5,800 RPM. We would do short cast, keep costs lower. We'll keep the exhaust diameter at its normal setting, and we'll go with the three-way cat, reverse muffler, and we're done. Okay, let's go ahead and run it. And as we can see, I already have 100 horsepower out of this thing, and I haven't even optimized it. And this is another reason why I put the fuel mixture all the way down. It's kind of a way of detuning the engine, because if we draw a comparison to what I was talking about before, with the Chevy engines at this time period, we had a 2.2-liter engine that, if I remember correctly, produced 95 horsepower, and we had a 2.5-liter engine that produced something like 105. And by me having the fuel mixture down as low as it can go, not only do I benefit in the economy numbers, but I also keep the engine a little bit lower powered to match what we have in reality, real life. But if I were to do this engine realistically, I would have had this fuel mixture a lot richer than I have it, obviously. Okay, so we have a lot of room to move. We probably could make the the compression ratio higher than it is. But as I discussed, we can game the system and use a lot of ignition timing instead to gain actually more power and economy and a lot of other things, rather than do it that way, even though real engines usually benefit quite a bit from compression ratio. In this game, that's not necessarily the case. Okay, so let's go ahead and move things, and let's watch our numbers here, and also try and keep an eye on what we have going on over here as well. We're obviously going to have to change the RPM limit, but I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal. And we're starting to get... I'm just watching the numbers to make sure they don't fall, because then we're starting to run into the peak of what we can get out of ignition timing without doing other changes, which right there we were knocking, and that's why that dropped off. Okay, so we got close to 110 horsepower. And let's go ahead and change our RPM limit to get its performance index where we would like it. The only problem with that is we're starting to run into quite a bit of issues reliability-wise. And we may want to back this thing off as far as how aggressive it is cam profile-wise. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to back off the compression ratio a few points, and we're going to play with the cam profile here. Try and see if we can get that. See, we're already starting to reduce it here. See if we can get it down for a more reasonable area. It looks like 5,500 RPM is kind of where we're going to be. And then we'll play with ignition timing a little bit here. See what we can get out of it. Okay, so we're not quite as powerful as we were, but we benefit in it being a little bit more reliable. And as a matter of fact, we're able to get it down to even 5,400 RPM. Now I can kind of toy with the RPM limit and not hurt us too much with reliability. There we are. We're at our peak, and we don't have any real color changes. Now, obviously, having it at 5,800 RPM makes our engine a lot more reliable. But by having here, we get our peak performance index, and we're still above 60 with our reliability. I think it's actually almost really close to the reliability of our other engine. So there you go. So I think this engine is looking pretty good. Let's look at other things that we can do, though. Exhaust diameter might not be where it needs to be. So you don't want to reduce it, and you don't want to increase it. So 1.75 inches, it looks like it's about right. All right, actually... It didn't seemingly take me that long to build this engine from scratch. It looks like we're about where we need to be as far as everything goes. We got our performance, 107 horsepower, 118 foot-pounds of torque. This is better than all of the engines I mentioned from Chevy outside of that very high-performance 2.3-liter engine, which had a pretty high compression ratio, as well as obviously probably being, meant for, kind of performance-oriented setup. So that, makes sense that it did as well as it did. And it also had 4 valves per cylinder and a bunch of other things in its favor. Okay, so I think we're pretty happy with this. What am I going to call this engine? I actually didn't think about this at all, so I really don't know. Lately, I haven't been very good with my engine names, so we'll call this the, we'll call it the BB, and I'll just put the year period in here. 91. And the reason I call it the BB is because this is going to be our backbone. This is where a lot of cars are going to come out of our assembly line with this engine. This is the optional engine for the Luna, but it will also be in, at the very least, our Star as well, and possibly powering our satellite as well, although I haven't really decided on that just yet. So the variant we're going to have is the 2.2-liter variant. And there we go. So we have our 2 engines for the Luna and a building block for the future. So let's go ahead and look at our engines and compare them. All right, so let's go ahead and sort. Our engines sort by year. And we have our the engines we want to compare. So we have the LE81 and the old, not 81, 86. LE... Where's the 86? There it is. Right next to the L135, which is also what we want to draw comparisons from. And then for 91, we've got the BB91, and we've got the LE91. Okay. So we have a number of engines for the L135 engine, but the main one we're going to be looking at is this just normal 2.2-liter one, not the high output one. And for the LE86, we also have a turbocharged version. We'll be ignoring that. So if we compare the LE86 to the LE91 with the two 1.6-liter variants, we look like we get more than 6 horsepower improvement. Now, you have to take into account this is using electronic fuel injection, so you have that advantage. Then you have a little bit more torque, about a little bit over 3 foot-pounds of torque there. Emissions, much reduced. Again, that's the switch from a carburetor, a tubular carburetor at that, to electronic fuel injection. Responsiveness, much better, a 4-point improvement. Loudness, it's much louder, but you also have to consider that we removed a muffler, so there you go. Smoothness, it's about the same. Production time, it's a little bit more, but again, fuel system change, so there we go. The costs go up as well, but again, fuel system change, so we have that. Now, reliability is where we really benefit. This has jumped up quite considerably, so that's a very good thing to see. Economy is also quite a considerable gain, and weight is a few pounds lighter. So it looks like pretty much all around, outside of the cost and how long it takes to build, we're doing better. Now, if we compare our 2.2 engine here to what we had in the past, well, before we were under 90 horsepower, and now we have over close to 107. So a good improvement there. Our torque is also much improved, almost 13 foot-pounds of torque. Our emissions, again, are much reduced. This engine even outperforms our old 2.4-liter engine and our 2.2 high output engine, so very good there. The responsiveness, again, is better than all of these engines, so I guess we're not going to ignore the other variants because it seems like it's doing better. Loudness, it's quieter than our high output engine, which has, I think, similar muffler setup, but obviously louder than the two that had the double reverse flow muffler. Smoothness, Looks like about the same or better, depending on which one. The 2.4 liter version is obviously less smooth, but I think it was very much long stroke, so that, that kind of is understandable. Production unit wise, it looks like it's quicker to build outside of the high output one, and that might be the muffler difference. I'm gonna possibly guess there, but you also have, this is a fuel injected engine and a single overhead cam, which both of those should have caused this to be a higher production time, but it's not. That's very interesting to see. Oh, aluminum. I forgot. This is an aluminum block and head engine. That's probably why. Okay, cost-wise, it looks like we cost a little bit more in some versions, but the 2.4 liter version and the high output version are more expensive. Reliability, again, massive improvements here, so that's good to see. And our small economy car, that we're getting that rugged reliability I'm kind of going for. Economy-wise, again, we improved quite a bit. And then weight, we are heavier, and I already kind of discussed. This has an aluminum block and head, so that's where you have that pretty big weight reduction here. So we will suffer a little bit because of that, but I think the improvement in performance and economy may balance that out. We'll have to see. In any case, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This is Mouse Gunner signing out.